Hello everyone, good morning and welcome to this Intralogistics Connected webinar. I'm Christopher Walton, Editor of Logistics Manager, and I'm your host for this interactive session, where Cobra Supply Chain will discuss autonomous mobile robots for today, not tomorrow. In this exclusive webinar, we will examine how autonomous mobile robots, or AMRs, can transform logistics operations. For example, did you know that AMRs reduce the need for seasonal workers by 80%? We'll be exploring facts like this throughout the webinar. Today, I'm joined by James Mottershed, Solutions Specialist at Cobra Supply Chain. James has 20 years of experience working within the logistics industry, comprising of 8 years as Purchasing and Warehouse Manager and 12 years with Cobra Supply Chain, working in partnership with the development, implementation and sales teams. Throughout this webinar, James will guide you through an autonomous mobile robot journey. So sit up and discover the positively shocking impact AMRs will have on your operation. The future is here and the future is now. So why not ask James a question? That's what this morning is all about. You can pose your questions throughout this webinar as soon as they cross your mind in the Q&A box you see at the bottom of your screen. Just click on it, it will open a window and you can type your question in there. I'll be able to see them and I'll pose those questions to James. When posing a question, don't forget to tell us your name. We might not have time to answer all of your questions today, but I'm sure James will get back to you after today's webinar. I should also mention that this webinar will be available on demand on Logistics Manager from this afternoon. So if you're unable to stay throughout the course or want to share it with colleagues, then do by all means go on to Logistics Manager. So let's hear all about how autonomous mobile robots can transform logistics operations. Over to you, James.
Okay. So thank you very much, Chris, for that introduction. As Chris says, I'm James Mottershed. I work for Cobra Supply Chain within their BA team, and I specialise on working on solution design for AMR, which pretty much means my day-to-day job is visiting operations, reviewing and understanding processes, and looking at the best and most practical solutions for AMR within the four walls of the warehouse. So we put together some content for you today to look at what AMR is, why would you choose AMR, and which individual AMR flavor that may fit your requirements, and then we're going to look at individual solutions. So pretty much what I'd like you guys to get out of today is a greater understanding of the different flavors of AMR that are available, what you need to consider when you're looking at an AMR solution, but also how to get the most out of that AMR solution once you've implemented. So just very briefly, what I thought to just introduce Cobra to you, and probably if anything like me, 3 years ago you might not have heard of Cobra Supply Chain. But what Cobra have done over the last sort of decade is bring together a number of key businesses together to form Cobra Supply Chain. The rebrand happened on the 1st of September this year, and there's a number of different businesses you may have heard of. So a number of tier 1 WMS providers. My particular background was within Voitech, within the UK market. You may have heard of Cirrus Logistics from a modelling and simulation perspective, but we also got a breadth of knowledge and understanding for the likes of Riantix for more traditional automation solutions that are out there. The likes of Langhammer with layer picking robotics products that are out there, and Cohesio Group, who work down in the APAC region of a breadth of implementing goods to man AMR solutions. So just a bit of an overview on Cobra, of who we are and where we sit, and a bit of our expertise. Okay, let's jump in pretty much into the detail. That's what are autonomous mobile robots? Well, pretty, in a nutshell, these are robots that are capable of autonomous navigation within within the warehouse. And there's several different form factors and capabilities of AMRs that include, but are not limited to, things such as good to man, movement of goods, collaborative robot solutions. And we're going to talk about these in a little bit more detail. I've picked on those three key areas just because predominantly that's my area of expertise in terms of my
Sorry,
history.
James, can I just interrupt you there? We're not able to see your screen at the moment. If we can just get the slide presentation up, please.
Apologies, I thought you'd...
No worries. There you go. Perfect.
We're back up. Apologies.
Yeah.
So I'll just move back one. So we're talking about the what is autonomous mobile robots, and you'll see a number of flavors of what they are, what are available there. Like I mentioned, from the goods to man, more collaborative cobot solutions, and also movements. I think it's really important at this point to just reflect on, robotics and automation and what the difference is. In my world and in my mind, this isn't robotics versus automation. This is about the best fit for the requirements for your business. And we're, absolutely, automation, it has its place and has its speciality. You're looking at real finite detail of process optimization, a repetitive task, the high bay, high density requirement, then an automation solution is absolutely the right tool for that job. When we're talking about robotics, we're talking about flexibility and scalability, and you'll notice that I'll talk about those two points, flexibility and scalability, throughout the whole presentation, because it's a real key factor. Multitask capabilities. AMR solutions aren't just there for a picking process, but they can be there for a put away process, can be there for a replenishment process, moving goods from location A to location B, maybe moving goods from an end of a production line to be placed within a rack space. These are all of the points that differentiate between robotics and automation. I thought it was pretty key to make that point, that we're not saying that robotics will replace automation completely. It's also interesting just to look at sort of the benefits against sort of a manual operation, an automation operation, and AMR. We've all been into a manual process where the low cost, high flexibility, scalability, but the speed and the throughput generally is quite low within a manual process. And it's pretty much the polar opposite from an automation solution, where the higher cost in terms of setup, the flexibility and scalability, it tends to be lower, but the speed is improved. What we're seeing is the AMR piece of being that middle ground, of being able to have your flexibility and scalability, and having the speed, but having a lot more control from the operator's perspective. And I think it's really important that we show the benefits in each area. So why have businesses implemented that? Well, our customers tell us it's because of the flexibility and scalability it provides throughout. We're talking about productivity and throughput, problems that it potentially can solve, labor shortages, more demanding SLAs. They're having a solution that's easily scalable to deal with peak periods. I was talking to Chris just before we started with regards to a lot of the customers that I'm speaking to at the moment are looking at the robots, the RAS model, or robots of a service, to help as part of the scalable solution. And one of the points in designing an AMR process, once you have hold of that kind of data, is to be able to take into consideration you know, the 5-10 year growth plans of a particular operation, and building that into the design, but not necessarily delivering that up front. You know, we're talking to customers at the moment that are dealing with the challenges that the COVID pandemic is bringing to them, and the sort of challenges are not necessarily being able to rely on you know, forecasting and trends where peaks would appear without, you know, without any kind of knowledge. So having a solution that's in place that can add robots in, add particular workstations in reasonably quickly, and to get to the scale you need quickly is really important. When people are looking at making the decision on AMR solutions, one point that isn't always at the forefront of their mind is how fast it is to implement, you know, an AMR solution. But it becomes pretty apparent to them very quickly that having that solution that can be implemented quickly becomes, you know, further up their priority list. And we're seeing lots of that, and particularly with the changes when we make the scalable changes, it becomes more of a, you know, a key factor. So just a couple bit more in terms of the higher rank benefits. So this is a survey that was conducted by the IDC of around 550 respondents. So basically what they're saying within the top 7 benefits that they're seeing is the increase in operational capacity is, you know, is the most important thing for them. But high up on that list is that business flexibility, being able to adapt as things change. We've spoken about, you know, seasonal peaks or unexpected peaks that come in, that the AMR solutions can provide, you know, that flexibility to scale quickly. But that could also be through acquisition. That could be through, you know, new product launches, new product ranges. That flexibility becomes, you know, really key for them. You know, and up there also, you know, is a reduction in operating costs. It becomes, you know, quite apparent that that's, you know, that's always going to be on the list, but, you know, the flexibility, operational capacity becomes, you know, a little bit further up there for you. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today around 3 particular vendors within the AMR marketplace. There are more out there. Like I said at the very beginning, my expertise and my knowledge is around these particular vendors, and I've split them into 3 sections that are going to look at the goods to man, product movement, and then the cobot solutions. But I think what's really important is to understand that you need a toolkit, in my opinion, for an AMR solution. You know, and one of the analogies that somebody said to me that I really like is that sometimes when you get if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and you're just going to, you know, go after everything. Well, actually, what you really need is a toolkit. So what we're not saying is that that one of these solutions is going to solve all of your problems. It may be that there's you know, you need a combination of 2 or 3 different solutions depending on the problem that you're particularly trying to solve. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Geek Plus. So Geek Plus have a broad portfolio of robotics, of robots available and solutions. They're a market leader in goods to person AMR solutions. That's what we're going to focus on today with them. We as Kerber have had great success together in a number of sectors with Geek Plus, whether that's food service, whether that's apparel, whether that's high-end products. There's a number of different areas where we've got some case studies and processes. I'm going to show you a video in a second, and I'm going to stop at a couple of points just to emphasize some areas. But I think it's just to, you know, give you some information before the video starts. The goods to person AMR solution is the robots are working in an area where there isn't any people, where the idea is to maximize the storage capacity within the grid. You'll see racks that are moving around. The robots are guided by QR codes on the floor, and they're feeding picking stations, or workstations on at the beginning of the pick. the front of the warehouse, so that they can then maximize that potential by reducing that unproductive walking time. They're constantly being fed orders and items to pick, and also to put away to make sure that the grid is has the stock in there it needs. So I'll start the video, and then we'll go through, and we'll stop it at some certain points just to give you an idea of. You see the robots, they're able to work under the racks that are in place. You'll see the QR codes that they're moving on, so it understands where that particular robot is at that time, and it will then go and collect the rack that's required and return it back to the workstations. So you can look at the type of density, and I just wanted to make a quick point here. You can see the amount of racks that are in the areas. Having that density of product allows us to hold enough stock, even though there is fresh air above. Whether that's space is not utilized, whether there's mezzanine floor above that, that's the type of work area. But more importantly in that, this isn't a brand new build warehouse that's been designed specifically for AMR. This is taking a solution and putting it into an existing area. Yes, the floor space has been cleared, but it does give you an example of that working in that kind of environment. Just while I'll stop that in a second again. If you look at the racking that is on display here, we're really flexible in how we sort of configure these racks. A recommendation would be you're probably going to need to have no more than 4 different variations of configurations of rack, depending on your product type. And this is where the design of the solution up front comes to the forefront, because understanding your product type, where this product needs to be placed, how big it is, whether that needs to be picked in singles, whether that's picked in cases. Product may be placed into different locations into the area, but these racks are then produced and presented to the operator at the workstation, which you'll see here. And the operator has a very simple process of identifying the product and placing the goods away. So it shows you the type of dynamic process that's happening. I think what's really crucial to understand is that the Geek solution has the capability of learning as we move. So the AI machine learning aspect comes into effect when it understands that a particular product is being picked a lot more, whether that's a peak period or whether that's just a consistent fast moving goods. It will locate that type of goods at the beginning of the beginning of the picking grid, so it doesn't have to travel in any great distance. So again, improving so that understanding of product and continuous evolution so that takes place. From an operator's perspective, you'll see on the image on screen that there's 3 racks waiting for the operator. This is really important because this is how we're able to get the throughput and the amount of orders picked by an operator to the levels that we do, because the operator isn't moving. They are there. The rack's presented. And in an ideal world, they'll pick from multiple positions within that rack. We pick from both sides of the rack, so the rack may spin around and allow you to pick from the other side as well. But the operator is continuously guided to the area or the location within the rack to pick from. They will scan the product to identify, and you'll see on screen, just on the bottom left corner of the image, that there is a red light that's guiding the operator to place that item within the within that grid. In this example, you're picking into totes. That could be into cartons. That could be into pallets. That could be a combination of those processes. But this type of workstation at the moment you're seeing is being used as picking, but also then could be used during a night shift or quieter times as a put away. So again, having that flexibility to be able to use the same workstation for multiple different processes, and also for stock inventory as well. So that's the type of goods to man solution. just to give you an idea of the numbers, this came from a project that we implemented actually into a chill environment. So had this working with a food service business with a chill environment, and I think it's quite important to note that although this is there's 2 shift operations, so reducing the operators from 25 to 8 to be able to deal with that throughput, it's not uncommon with a goods to man solution. Yes, it needs some potential changes to warehouse layout to be able to accommodate the racks that we're talking about. But I was with one of our long-standing customers for around 3 weeks ago, and we were looking at a particular solution that's has seen a huge spike in e-commerce since the COVID pandemic. But we were looking at a solution where they have around 38 operators, and we were looking to reduce that to around 6. That's the type of numbers that we're looking at for a goods to man solution, by increasing the throughput and the capacity, and removing pretty much all of that dead time, that non-productive walk time that we were talking about. And I think it's really interesting, just from my perspective. My previous work has been around looking at voice solutions, and the one area of improvements that we could never really improve on, although pick paths would have an impact on that, was that unproductive dead time. Whereas this resolves all of that issue and have that that improvement there as well. Let's talk a little bit about Fetch now. Fetch Robotics and what you're about to see is a completely different solution to what we just spoke about from a goods to man. The Fetch have a broad range of industry-leading bots. Their platform is highly configurable, and you have pretty much as much control as you want over the flow. But this is an idea of taking product from position A to position B. Just to give you a bit of an idea, I was with a customer recently where we're looking at taking completed orders from the operator within the rack back to a packing station for the operator to continue. And that walk was around 75 to 100 meters. So if you can imagine removing that kind of dead time, is where this type of solution that we're gonna look at now comes into its own. So this robot is working in the environment of the warehouse, interacting with forklift trucks or navigating around forklift trucks and people. So it just gives you another idea of where robotic solutions can be. And again, you look at the configuration of the rack that it moves, could be from taking goods for a put away solution, taking completed goods. And you'll see in the video the navigation round obstacles and interaction with people in the warehouse. There's a couple of different variations and flavors. The robot you see on screen here is being used for a put away solution. This particular process was interacting with an ASRS. It's a good example of using the right tool for the right job. As I mentioned previously, it's all about, in my opinion, having a toolkit. So, an ASRS working in collaboration with an AMR to solve the particular problem that it needs to solve. A lot of people are focused on the amount of man hours that it saved, but for me, the real, the goal in this was to decrease the order processing dwell times, and we've done that by integrating that with an ASRS solution. And again, coming back to we worked with Fetch on a number of processes and problems to solve, where customers may have started with the initial solution, the Cart Connect solution, and then maybe moved into this by changing things with their robots as a service process. So it's important that the evolution of the products and the evolution of your process is looked after by the flexibility of the robot solution that we're looking to implement. again, another flavor of where we are in, or what's available from a robotic solution is a Locus solution. So so these guys are market leaders in the cobot solutions. So the benefits of a solution such as this is being able to fit it into a brownfield operation with very little, if any, changes to the operational space. And I come back to the point I made earlier with regards to implementing solutions where we keep the operator within the picking aisle within this particular instance, and allow the robot to come to them, and keeping the interaction with the bot to as minimal as possible to make sure that we get the speed input. And I think Locus have the very configurable solution. I liken it to a warehouse execution software that sits behind, so you have dashboards, etc., and data, and allowed the operation, the supervisor, to monitor and make adjustments to the process in real time. And the robots themselves are flexible and are really easy to navigate. So we'll move on to the next video. So this particular video showing the cobots moving in the interaction with the operator. I think this is probably the image that we want to to get across to you guys, is to show the operational layout and setup hasn't changed. It's the robots that are now fetching goods to the operator, allowing them to pick, minimal interaction with the robot itself, other than scanning the product and identifying it, and then the robot then returns back to the back to the packing station and moves from there. I think we've there's a few sort of key points I just wanted to get across before we sort of move on to any questions that you guys have. And if you're looking at implementing an AMR solution, you're looking at different options and where we are. The phrase I like to use is, don't try and boil the ocean. These solutions are flexible. These solutions are scalable, so use that to your benefit in terms of implementing. So I've spoken to businesses over the past few months, particularly, that have tried to get implemented solutions, or we've spoken to them, oh, AMR's not for us, it doesn't work, we tried it. And when you then dig down a little bit deeper and have those conversations, well what actually happened? And they've tried to go big bang with that kind of solution and tried to go too big too quickly. So, trying to have that kind of more scalable approach, that small approach to get something in and get it working, then, there's no better people that know their business and their process, their organization, than yourselves, and being able to then make those changes as you move forward. I've mentioned it briefly in terms of a toolkit, and having that hammer that one size fits all. That's never going to be the case from an AMR solution. Don't back yourself into that technology cul-de-sac that means you have one supplier, one vendor. There are each of these vendors that I've mentioned have their real specialist areas. They have other other products that you can see on screen, but make sure that you're looking at each individual area of expertise on its own merit. A couple more points. So the data is really key for this, to understand the throughput, to be able to look at those predictive processes. And from experience, it's also understanding what the knock-on effect is going to be to other areas of your business. So for example, maybe a goods to man solution, when you then see the amount of throughput that you can get through those processes, what's the impact then to my dispatch area? What's the impact then to my packing area? What do I need to do to that? So having a look at that and understanding the full end-to-end process is absolutely key. Design and integration. I've spoken about some solutions here that require an awful lot of integration. Some of them, we were talking about one of the fetch solutions that we're talking with a customer recently, potentially isn't going to need any integration whatsoever to move goods from position A to position B. So to be able to understand that and, you know, limit the amount of integration that's required, if that's maybe a pain point from an IT perspective within your business, that's something that we can consider, you know, from an AMR perspective. But I think that, you know, if you're like me and a little bit of a logistics technology geek, you know, the robots are fantastic. They are great bits of kit to look at. You know, the navigational aspects of it is fantastic. But actually, other than that, there isn't much more that they do. It's around the design of the solution. It's around the software that sits around that particular robot. You need to ensure that it is implemented correctly. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a you know, an introduction to AMR robotics on the three sort of key flavors that I've given you. Chris, I can open up the floor to any
Absolutely, for questions. So yeah, this is the Q&A portion of the webinar, and James, you'll be relieved to know, or maybe not so relieved to know, I've just done the presentation, that the questions have been absolutely flooding in. So I would encourage everybody, get your questions in now. We've got quite a few to work through just by clicking on that Q&A box at the bottom. So James, yeah, you mentioned within the presentation with AMRs working in an ambient environment and within a chilled environment. Do AMRs work in a frozen environment as well?
Well, the simple answer to that at the moment is it isn't available. It isn't out there within the range of what we've just spoken about. However, we are working on this with a couple of vendors at the moment. The key point to AMRs working in a freezer environment is the temperature control. So not that can it work at minus 27 degrees, it's keeping it in that kind of environment and not allowing it to come out and being opened up to sort of condensation and that kind of aspect to it. So the answer to that is that at the moment it isn't out there, but we're a long way down the path in terms of making that work. And there's some prerequisites that are required from an operation perspective.
Excellent. I better ask this question from Hadrian Berger, who was in there first and very early as well. So he's been dying to ask his question. Quite simply, what is the main factor to account for when choosing a robotic solution?
The main factor is it comes down to the operational, the operation. The factor. I don't think you can point at one area. I go and look at operations, on a weekly basis. At least 2 operations a week, and the factors that I'm taking into consideration there are the warehouse layout. Itself. What are the if you can look at a goods to man solution, then is there space within the 4 walls of that warehouse to make that kind of operational times? We also need to consider the size of the goods. What is the product that we're looking to move at the moment? There's no point having looking at a cobot solution if you're looking at sort of large case pick orders that you're distributing from your warehouse. So it's all about understanding the aspects around it and what the problem is that you're trying to solve. Is it around a cobot solution where keeping the brownfield site exactly the same but reducing that walk, so keeping your skilled picking operatives within that particular area and maximizing their pick rate by removing that walk path, or do we have the ability to make other considerable changes? And also from an IT perspective, in terms of integration, that's where we sort of tend to come in. But yeah, I don't think you can put it down to one particular individual point that makes it key. That's always going to say that's a cobot solution, that's a movement solution, or that's a goods to man solution. You need to look at the whole picture, and understanding the process is critical.
Marcin Leskowitz, and apologies, Marcin, if I've pronounced your surname wrong, asks, is there an AMR solution that can handle roll cages safely?
So the simple answer from what I've seen is no. You know, the sort of train approach that I presume they're sort of referring to in terms of grabbing that and moving it. I've seen, you know, a number of different areas have tried that, but in terms of the instability of that roll cage, then becomes more of a challenge, particularly within my area of expertise within the three areas. I don't see a solution that, like I said, the rolling cage that you see from a Cart Connect solution from Fetch is probably the closest from there.
Okay, Mike Ferguson asks, who manages the customer solution? Is it the manufacturer of the AMR or is it the integrator?
Well, that depends on the process. From where we bring our expertise to the table is around that integration piece, and that's where we can assist. And we've even we've gone to, in some aspects where it's been more of a challenge from the customer perspective, is designed connector software to be able to make that transition a lot easier in terms of the integration piece. Usually from our perspective, that's what we do day in, day out. We are an integration business that look at the software and take that from the requirements of your WMS, whether that's a WCS. There's different aspects of where it comes from, but as Kerber Supply Chain, that's pretty much what I do day in, day out.
Mike McCloy asks, quite an operational question, which system does the ongoing slotting to ensure the racks remain optimized?
So that's presuming we're referring to the goods to man solution from Geek, and that's absolutely. Geek has there's several layers of configurability, if you like, from that of how much you want to control that. So Geek has the ability to then control where that item goes. That can come from a feed from the host system, again from the WMS or the ERP, can take a feed from that to highlight. So again, that comes back to the integration piece that we talk about, to whether we take a feed to say whether this is now a seasonal product, whether it's a fast moving, or whether we allow the solution to make that decision, based on the number of orders it's seeing and the throughput it's seeing. So it can be sort of semi-controlled by the WMS ERP, or it can be fully controlled by the Geek solution. That come down to again, understanding your requirements and how we do that. There's another option that let's just, for argument's sake, if you run a 2-shift operation, then you can also have the ability that if the next day's orders that have already been made available, then the solution can also do that overnight, outside of the picking processes. So there are a number of options there, but the control, again, come back to the my flexibility aspect. We can put that that control wherever you like.
Gavin Toll has a quick question about the Fetch Robotics solutions, and asks simply, does it use a LiDAR-based navigation system?
Yes.
Yeah.
I like those questions. Yes, absolutely. There are different navigation systems, as you said, from a LiDAR navigation. So it's from a safety perspective, it's looking around sort of 10 meters so in front, and then you have the 2 cameras, the 3D cameras that are looking around sort of 4 meters in front for more what's the word I'm looking for, more sort of impacts that are going to happen pretty much straight away, opposed to further away. But yes, it does. Short answer, yes.
Okay. Tony Hughes asks, do you have any reference sites that can be visited, COVID permitting, of course?
Yeah, so it will depend on the solution that we're looking at. But yes, we have reference sites within the UK that we can we can take. So as you know, we've spoken specifically like quite a narrow aspect, just to keep the the flow of what we wanted to talk about, goods demand, movement, and then cobot solutions. But yes, short answer is yes, but it'd be good to understand exactly what the requirement is, so we could then explain why we might want to show one solution or another.
I'm sure we can put you in touch with Tony, James, should the need be. Gwyn Richards asks, how do you overcome idle time for the locus zone pick solution, and how do you communicate with the pickers in each zone?
Good question. So thanks, Gwyn. The idle time is purely down to configuration of zones and aisles, and et cetera, et cetera. So what happens with the locus solution is when you finish your pick, you'll then the on-screen image will then show you where your next robot will be. So that's around the configuration then to say, well, that my work area may be, restricted to half an aisle in a particularly fast moving area, or that could be 2 or 3 aisles, depending on, the work rate. So the work and how that's spread out. So that idle time. So then there will be some walking from an operator's perspective, but nowhere near in terms of a full end-to-end walk that's from one location to another. And sorry, Chris, I forgot the second part of that question.
Okay, so it was, and how do you communicate with the pickers in each zone?
So probably answered some of that. So we've done some work on this as well from a voice perspective. So what you'll notice on the Locus devices, there are screens. So they will look at the location information, they will look at the product information, they will scan the product. The operator has a sort of a lanyard with a key device that's Bluetooth. So when they approach that particular robot, rather than having to log in and it knows it's them, it already pre-knows that operator is there, and they're picking the right item, so that they can attribute the correct productivity requirements against that operator against them as well. So all of those robots, all of those statistics sit in the background. But there is like I said, there is work ongoing in terms of, for example, voice solutions that have been put onto the back of this. So the command can be simple to hear, and the identification of the product, verification is done very quickly, and then can be placed onto the robot. Particularly within this industry, as you guys surely know, this is moving at a really fast pace, and different vendors are bringing out different solutions and different, modifications on an almost weekly basis. So it's another area where, integration businesses like Kerber, like myself, keeping a breadth of those latest updates, those latest, innovations is really key.
Sadly, this is from an anonymous person. We'd love to know your names when you ask your questions. But simply, do the AMRs work well for a large pallet operation?
So, in this instance, it's a challenge in terms of, if we're talking about movements. You'll see at the very bottom the fetch solutions of 1500 and the 500, which refers to the weight that they can carry. That, so in terms of that capability is there, and yes, there are some solutions around getting the pallet to the right height, and that's pretty much where this is key. And honestly, in my opinion, we're a bit away from getting a solution that is viable. So getting a pallet to a right height, i.e., some kind of movement to allow a robot underneath it to collect it, and movement requires around about a 5 meter square area to do that. You also got the time it takes for the pallet to be brought to the right height. That differs from 30 seconds to a minute at each end, bearing that in mind. So the space requirement to do that and the time it takes is a bit more of a challenge. There are, however, other solutions that we have available. I'm not sure whether it's probably relevant to go into at this point, but there are other options available to that, and again, happy to have that kind of brief conversation to explain that on a separately.
I know the type of flooring in the warehouse is crucial to the rollout of AMRs, and Daniel Waleed asks a question of, do the AMRs work on metal grating floors?
So, well, I think it's difficult to get involved with each, flooring type, in its own merit. I think just, needless to say, it requires a smooth floor, and where the gaps between, whether that's a concrete floor, whether they join, whether that's metal, whether that's on a mezzanine, on a maybe a more wooden floor, whatever that may be, that needs to be of a certain standard. For a mezzanine floor, you need to take the weight into consideration. We'd need to look at each flooring type on its own merit. I think probably one of the points I've taken a little bit for a given, that just to on a bit of a side stream, is around charging. These robots will find their own charging bay. We'll put them in particular areas. Locating those against pillars within the warehouse where space is already sort of not being used is really key for this. And they'll all have their own factors where they'll, some may get to a percentage of 80%, go off and charge themselves for a couple of hours. Some might allow themselves to go a lot lower before they need to go back and charge. But that's all taken into consideration through the design and throughput stage of that. So flooring, absolutely key. If you've got cracks and damages and pit holes all through that, then that might be a recommendation to get that tidied up. But we need to look at each one on its own merit.
I think you mentioned earlier, and this question comes from an anonymous attendee. You spoke about the Freight 1500 solution, which has a load capacity of 1,500 kilograms. Does that still need to be loaded by a person or AGV? And they also ask, is there an under-shelf solution with that level of payload?
So that's exactly what I was referring to before. Sorry if I'm not making myself clear. That yes, either to be loaded by an operator, or an undershelf, i.e., lifting the product to a certain level and then being able to for the robot to collect it from there. My opinion at the moment is not necessarily if you've got the space to handle that, and the movement of that is of a decent level to accommodate the 30 seconds to a minute it takes to get that to that kind of level, then that's absolutely something to consider. But again, you get into very specialized areas. There are other ways of potentially doing that as well.
Okay. I've had a question here, I'll just kind of summarize it shortly, just about the health and safety impacts for operatives within the warehouse when you're deploying an AMR solution. What's your view on that?
So, from the Geeks Goods to Man solution, that doesn't really impact that, because of the having the robots in an area that they're working on their own. Although they do have the health and safety aspects of will stop if somebody goes near to that particular robot. The same is for the FEC solutions that work on the two aspects that I've spoken around before. The things to consider are more around where the human interaction can make a difference. The robots are, have all of the sensors, have all the health and safety aspects that they require. But if you're using a cart connect and you put something that sits outside of that 50 by 50 roll cage that then protrudes outside of that, then the robot doesn't know about it. That's something that an aspect, an area that does really need to be taken into consideration. But that's why the vast majority of the solutions that you see have these kind of caged areas around the side of it to stop that type of process happening.
And James, you might be really
sorry,
James, what was that?
I was just the one thing to consider when you have, robots in working in the environment with operators and is a machinery, is the amount of interaction that they have. They will slow for other robots, for other users and such like. So, depending on the width of the aisles is very important for those types of solutions to make sure that they can get down without having to slow, without having to stop. You can configure into those types of solutions, lanes or areas in a warehouse where the robot will automatically slow down to go through, because that's a congested area of the warehouse. So all of those things again come back to the design and configuration of the solution in the first place.
Okay. And James, you might be relieved to know that this is the last question in the Q&A part. But I think it's a good one, just to get us all thinking. So do you see any disruptive solutions coming into the sector that could make existing solutions obsolete? Weldon's Hadrian Berger again for a great question.
I'm not sure about obsolete. I think we'll come back to my initial point around having that toolkit for that particular process, for that particular requirement. What we are seeing, is a few flavors on screen is the more roller top solutions that are coming into play, depending on that's something that's growing, very, very, very quickly, within the marketplace. But they're solving a different problem to the other goods to man solutions that we're talking about, interacting with sortation systems or becoming a sortation system in its own right from an AMR perspective. We've not really touched on that in terms of what we've spoken about today, but that's an area that's that's growing very quickly, that's coming on. I know some of the the vendors are looking at sort of mobile pick walls, so to solve that consolidation issue of B2C e-com orders, that where multiple products might be picked from different areas of the warehouse. Having that mobile put wall is something that guys are looking at, and it's not imminent, but will be coming out into the new year. But it's examples of them. I don't see them making anything else obsolete from what I'm seeing at the moment and what I've been privy to information on. But that they will definitely grow, they will evolve, and it'll become an improved solution.
Well, James, that's been absolutely fascinating, and thank you for fielding all of those questions.
No problem. Thank you.
I'm afraid to say that this webinar is coming to an end. So I hope everybody watching it has enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it too, James.
Yes, we did.
So I would like to thank our sponsor today, which is Cobra Supply Chain. And I'd also like to thank our speaker today, James Mottershead, Solution Specialist at Cobra Supply Chain, for his time and expertise. Thank you so much this morning, James. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Thank you.
As I said at the top of the webinar, a recording of this webinar is available on logisticsmanager.com later this afternoon, so you can catch up on anything that you've missed. And if you've enjoyed it, why not share it with your colleagues as well? And whilst I'm here, just let me tell you, we've got a series of webinars coming up where I personally will count down the Logistics Manager top 50 service providers over a week of webinars starting on the 1st of December. We've got webinars coming up featuring our sponsors West Coast, Clipper Logistics, Logicor and Canaxia Logistics. They promise to be a lot of fun and a great insight into what some 3PLs and service providers are doing. So look out for some more details on those. And that's it. Thank you again for attending this webinar. Thank you to our speakers and to our sponsors, Cobra Supply Chain, and we look forward to seeing everybody soon. Thank you. Goodbye.